Hi, I'm Stephen Foskett with blog.foskets.net and Tech Field Day, and I'm here at VMworld 2012, and we are visiting with a few interesting companies to learn about some of their announcements and some of the new things that they're doing, and we're here today with Veeam. So before we get started talking about it, why don't we go around the table and introduce ourselves and where people can find us, and then we'll jump right in. You want to start, Luca?
Okay. Yeah, I am Luca from Italy, and I blog at VMworld.it.
I'm Maish from Israel. Maish Saidel-Keesing, my Twitter handle. My blog is technical.
Shane Williford, based out of Kansas City. Twitter ID is @coolsport00, the expert 2011-2012.
Roger Lund, at Roger Lund. Blogs, vroger.com and vbrainstorm.com.
And again, I'm Stephen Foskett from blog.foskets.net, and you can find me at sfoskett.
And I'm Doug Hazelman from Veeam, and I live in St. Petersburg, Florida now. And you can find me, VM Doug, and also veeam.com/blog.
And he's the green guy.
Yeah, you can green screen me out.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the head.
Except fish.
I'm Gabe from gabesvirtualworld.com.
All right, very good. So, does anybody want to sum up what did you hear from Veeam just now? Who wants to jump in with that?
Well, I think it's amazing what you're doing. The features that you are getting to implement with Exchange and configuration backup. I know the big thing was with left-hand storage. I'm excited to see what has yet to come.
Yeah, I think the ability to leverage storage snapshotting and technology is great, and the ability to just go into a Exchange database and pull out data is amazing. This time saver that is going to save admins, is going to pay for the product, in my opinion.
Great.
Adding one more thing is, it's also even more amazing that you're giving most good part of these tools for free to everybody. Functionality, certain functionality is limited, but most part of it is very, very good. It's all free.
Did you have a question about that, Gabe?
Oh, well, did you study this? No, but before the video started, I was talking to you about aren't you giving away too many for free? Because, like I told you, we used the Exchange part quickly to back up, to restore a mailbox from a competitive product.
Mm-hmm. And we understand that's going to happen. But when we look at it from the Veeam perspective, I think all of you have been around long enough to understand that Veeam was built on a free product, Fast SCP. First product ever released from Veeam was Fast SCP. And since that time, back in 2006, we have now grown to a company of nearly 1,000 employees, selling products around the globe. So when it comes to a strategy for free, for us, it's all about giving useful tools to people, administrators, to make your jobs easier, and to show you that, wow, if Veeam is giving this for free, imagine what they can do with their paid product, right? Now, I understand that not everyone's gonna convert, but the nice thing is with the way we do our marketing is once you've downloaded the product, then we will continue to ask you questions and remind you in a very subtle and non-intrusive. Oh wait. But for us it's about lead generation, and the other aspect of it, specifically on the SAN snapshots, is to cause some market disruption, because there's always been kind of some vendors, some backup vendors that have done clearly very well in terms of working with SAN-based snapshots, recovering and using them for as the source. But it's a solution that for a lot of our core customers is out of reach for them from a price standpoint, and also from a technology standpoint of just installation and configuration. So what we're trying to do is show people that with virtualization, with VMware, that these things can really be easy. There's no need to make it all complicated, and the more hands we can get it in and show people what we can do on the free side, we feel it's going to help us to sell our paid products.
I just want to piggyback off that. Coming from an SMB, from the SMB market, the price point for my organization is perfect. And with all these amazing things that you do with your tool, you keep it simple. You know what I'm saying? It's not 30 clicks to get to this part of your product to do this specific feature. It's the interface, a menu, right click, there it is, done. And that's, you're keeping with that ideal as you're adding new things. And for me, anyway, that is key.
Yeah.
So I
You know
appreciate
what you
that.
should do
Not
is you
only
should come
the
up with a
interface.
very complicated licensing manager and then sell sub-licenses for each individual feature, and then you can really roast your customers, is what they call it.
Yeah, so
I think you should do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting, we talk, Shane, you mentioned, SMB, and we've had great success, in what's called the SMB market. It's different in Europe than it is in the US, blah, 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 whatever. But we've had great success, and a lot of that success has been due to partners and our channel and helping to push our products. But, we live by, or we design by the idea of, powerful, easy to use, affordable. We want to make it powerful. We want to introduce these innovative features that the SMB or some customers may have thought was out of reach for them. So very powerful features, very easy to use, and at a price point that is easy to absorb.
But is it the SMB market still your primary market? Because with the switch, with the arrival of V6, basically you designed the new distributed architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So this sounds like going to the enterprise market.
Correct. So
Because as in my example, in the data center, we have, I think, more than 1,000 VM, and using V5 was not so easy, okay? And with the upgrade to V6, it was really easy to design it and scale,
Yeah.
and so.
yeah, so when we say SMB, that's what I say has been traditionally our best customer and where we've had the best success. But we add features in because we have enterprise customers, right? We have customers that have large environments that need the distributed architecture. So it's a logical progression for us to go. But in terms of having a true, when we look at what is an enterprise-grade software product, we realize that, what we're going to have to do is make a product that takes 3 weeks to install, a team of consultants, and starts at about $100,000. And then we'll have an enterprise product.
Yeah,
So
you can
we
do that
can-
with the licensing manager too. You
Yeah,
can
yeah, we
implement
do
the
that
team
too.
of
Yeah,
consultants.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, our software is easily consumed by the SMB, but we have several enterprise
Yeah.
customers, and it's not that it's designed for the SMB. It's designed to be powerful, easy to use, and affordable. So.
One of the thoughts that comes to my mind about, showing off things like this new Exchange Restore is possibilities that, maybe some things with Epic being announced as a supported, applications out of VMware. Will you see cache integration, to be able to back those databases up at some point? That's the Epic backend. Just because I think that might be an interesting use case for the
Yeah.
future.
So, I mean, again, from our standpoint, anything, application-specific backup is probably not something we're going to do. We do image-level backup of our virtual machine. If it runs on VMware, we can back it up. And, that means we don't have to worry about the applications, the database structure, or anything, as long as it's encapsulated in that virtual disk file. Now, on the recovery things, like you said, like with Exchange, that's the first area we went because the customer feedback was make it easier to restore Exchange items. That's what we did. Now, you asked about SQL earlier, other applications, those types of things. Those are areas that we can do, but we're going to do it based on what our customers need the most, what's going to help us drive more revenue. That's the honest answer.
Yeah. And also this stuff shows your commitment to the feedback of the customer, because as a long-time Veeam user, I've seen many of the features, and you living also on your forums, I saw in the past that more of the feature comes from feedback, and you are taking this suggestion from customers. Okay, you have your own roadmap for sure, but you can introduce also some requests.
Yeah,
when needed.
Yeah, and everybody always says, "What's your roadmap?" It's like, well, we don't have a feature roadmap because as Anton will tell you, GoStev, he's our product manager, right? Everything's on the roadmap, right? Star is our roadmap, and that's because we want to deliver everything. We just have to work within time constraints of doing so. And from a development perspective, we have probably 100 features that we're working on at any given time. And it's just what is going to make it into the next release, and and then be part of the product and release. And one of those things might be something innovative that our Skunkworks team, they're out there doing some really weird stuff, but all of a sudden, like vPower, right? I mean, vPower was something that we realized that we were going to be able to deliver and be able to do, but we stayed quiet internally and externally about it for months because we wanted to apply properly for the patents, to patent the technology, and then we premiered it at Tech Field Day 3 in Redmond. So that was kind of the big premiere for it. So you're going to see things like that, but the forums, right? I mean, Luca is like the star forum member.
No, please. Anthony's a star.
No, according to Anton, you're the star. But that's and people always ask, well, how do I give feedback? Whatever. The Veeam forums, the best place to go for feedback. We had our session yesterday. If you're looking at some hardware and you want to know how well it's going to work with Veeam Backup, search the forum for the model number. Someone's probably commented on it. Someone's probably said, oh, it works, but you have to have this firmware and do this setting. So definitely a place to go.
Do you see yourself at any point in time kind of changing to do, we're talking about some of the announcements on Monday with the cloud suite and stuff. Do you see yourself being able to back up different service levels of disk versus the machines themselves? Kind of like more of the data protection view,
Right now we're very VM centric, right? Virtual machine centric. We're backing up the virtual machine. That's why I said, as we look at some of the new features and capabilities that are going to be available as part of the vSphere platform or even Microsoft's platform, is can we leverage that technology and we do things a little bit differently? So that's part of the areas of research that we're looking into. But you bring up an interesting point in terms of data protection and different tiers of data protection. Right? What we talked about with our Veeam Explorer for SAN snapshots, we view that as tier 1, right? So you can create a snapshot every hour, every 30 minutes, but if something happens to your SAN, that's gone, right? I call it fire, flood, or idiot. If something happens to it, that's not a backup. So your backup has to be off your primary storage. And then that becomes then tier 2. So you got tier 1 is on the primary storage for fast RPO. Then you've got the backups, which is essentially your tier 2. And then what we're looking at into the future is, that archival tier, that tier 3. The announcements that Amazon made around Glacier last week, I think, are really, really promising, and some easy ways for us to integrate with that. Tape is never off the table.
This is an announcement.
No, it's not an announcement. I said our roadmap is star. Remember, so tape is never off the table. It's just when do we support it? We want to make sure that we support it in a smart way, and looking at that tiered approach of tier 1, tier 2, and then a tier 3. That tier 3 could be the cloud, it could be tape, it could be dedupe. That's kind of how we look at it. It's not nearline. It's
some cold storage.
Cold storage, yes.
And I think that's really important because one of the things that I've seen on the VMworld show floor here, a number of storage companies are talking about their storage device as backup, as data protection, not as just storage. I mean, that's one of the features that they're trying to bake into storage devices and converged infrastructure devices, is that this is not just storage, this is also backup. And we've heard that story from a number of the storage companies for the last few years as well. I don't think that's backup. I aggressively don't think that's backup. I like the idea of using the tiered model because you can't just argue and say a snapshot isn't backup, because it is backup sometimes, but it's not good enough backup for everything.
Yeah.
And so I like the tiered concept because yes, you can do a snapshot and call it backup, but unless it's on a different system, unless it's not running in a different code base, you can still get bit. Whether even if it's even if it's really secure, even if it's really separate and everything, if it's running in the same cluster, the same code, something can happen to your data. I like the idea of having a tier 1, a tier 2 that's on different code, different infrastructure, and then a tier 3 that's somewhere else, that's archived. And it's good to hear you talking about that. And as we're all looking at the different companies, we should probably keep that in mind, that not just because somebody says something is backup doesn't mean it is.
No.
Absolutely. As Anton says, you have to have at least 3 copies before it's considered a backup. But I don't.
And you also have to have an index. That's another thing that gets me. Is that a lot of the time you'll hear somebody say, "Oh, just make a snapshot of that, and you got yourself a backup." That's not a backup unless you can find your data.
Exactly.
That's a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a copy.
It's a copy.
Have you ever thought about object-based storage integration via API, or maybe even being able to export to one of the standards out there? A lot of your object-based storage can read from some of those standards. More from you can plug it into the cloud or whatever.
Yeah.
There's some interesting object-based storage now on top of VMware too.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's kind of that idea, that tiered model, right? So what we want to be able to do is design it in such a way that, that archive or that deep storage tier can integrate with a number of different things. So it's definitely a direction that we're going in.
Talking about directions, I remember, if I'm correct, you were the first vendor to support multiple hypervisors for anything, VMware and Microsoft. So I gather, as a supporting partner for VMware, you saw that the market was going somewhere different. And after you, there were a number of multiple. Everybody started to ask, okay, you need to support multiple hypervisors. Question is, what I would like to know for your opinion is, where's it going after this? Because everybody's supporting multiple hypervisors. So what will the next thing be? As Veeam.
Did you bring me a crystal ball?
What do you think?
If you were to ask me, I would think first we will be supporting multiple clouds.
Okay.
And using your product, I had an idea which I spoke to Rick about once upon a time, was perhaps using backup products as a medium to migrate between platforms. For example, I take a VMware virtual machine, back it up, restore it into a Hyper-V machine, which might be something to be done further in, or to retake it and store it and back it up and restore it into Amazon Cloud.
Yep.
Which might be something which should happen.
It's it's always an interesting conversation to have, but when we look at the conversion that needs to take place to take a virtual machine from one platform to another, whether it's VMware to Hyper-V or Hyper-V to VMware, or Hyper-V to the cloud or whatever, even going from Hyper-V to Azure, right? There's differences. So we have to look at it and say, does it make the most sense for us to try to do all that conversion utility across multiple operating systems? Because it's one thing for Windows 2008 R2, but it might be once you add a service pack in, you've got VMware tools, that are deeply integrated. And then you've got the other hypervisor tools. So every hypervisor wants to install something on the guest. And so how do we, the block translation, that's the easy part, right? Going from a VMDK to a VHD. But it's inside the guest where, from a conversion standpoint, it's a lot more difficult.
And isn't it more something that the hypervisor vendor would usually deliver the conversion software?
Correct.
Well,
because VMware can import VHD, Hyper-V can import VMware and VMDK.
Yeah, but it'll always be one way.
No, there's an exception. Amazon did also the export too. But anyway, I think that from your standpoint, when you stay on the agnostic side, you back up VMs. So you don't have to be really careful about what the operating system inside. If you go into this conversion business, then you have to take care about the operating system, drivers, software, and right now you have one format. Okay, a VMDK is a VMDK. I don't care. Basic. Okay, you have something for VSS, but if you do a crash consistent backup, you don't have to care about what's inside.
Yeah.
And this is also the big advantage of doing backup in this way, rather than agent-based. If you move to the replication and conversion, then you have to support everything, because if you do not so, you will have to choose another time.
Yeah.
Which guest operating system I'm going to support.
Yeah, and what versions of that, right?
Yeah, also there is multiple versions.
And releases.
And I think the use case is too small, because I would become a bit nervous if today my VM runs on VMware, and tomorrow on Hyper-V, and in 2 days again back on VMware.
Maybe years in the future that might
will
be
probably
something.
happen.
Yeah.
It's make a difference to me.
But not right now.
Not
Right
yet.
now, I think it's more like it is kind of a one-way street, where somebody would just decide
Yeah.
very occasionally, I will change.
Also because of the size.
Or
Also
SLA,
because
you can move it to different hypervisors.
Yeah,
on the
okay,
fly.
but the problem for me is not on the hypervisor. I trust Hyper-V as much as VMware of running my workload. But getting the driver out of Windows, putting another driver in, getting that out again, putting it again, that's where I would get nervous. I wouldn't move that often between. I would use it as a migration, but not as
Correct.
a tool
But
for
if the process
cheap
were
here.
optimized and streamlined.
Yeah, and Microsoft offers tools for migration. VMware offers tools for migration. So I'd rather let the platform vendors provide the migration tools than have us do it, because as soon as we start doing backup on one platform and restore to another. Now we're in the migration game, and it makes us look like we may be favoring one platform or the other. And that's not the way we want to be. We embrace VMware as much as we embrace Microsoft. So it's.
And you didn't receive any flack from VMware from that, just as a matter of interest?
No. I mean, we're an independent software vendor. I think VMware understands that they're never gonna back up Hyper-V, but for a third party, they can do whatever they want, and it's just business, right? It's not personal or anything like that. It's business. Veeam's going to go after business that we see is going to help us drive revenue. And if you look at all the numbers from all the reports and hypervisors, the only hypervisor that's gaining any real market share is Hyper-V, of course. So.
Well, for now, we'll see how that happens.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that Server 2012 comes out. It could be a complete flop and nobody ever uses it, and everybody goes Zen or
KVM could really come on strong. Yeah.
Yeah. So but from our we're flexible in terms of okay, if that starts to happen, then we'll support that hypervisor.
So that brings up my question: are you looking at other hypervisors like Zen?
You heard everything's on the roadmap.
Everything's on the roadmap, right? But
there's something now quite in front of the roadmap.
No. Right now, there are no plans to support anything other than ESX and Hyper-V. I mean, that's it.
Well, right now for corporate server virtualization, if you support ESX or vSphere and Hyper-V, basically you've got like 90% of the market for corporate server virtualization. But Zen and KVM and others do have adherence, and especially when you look at cloud and you look at OpenStack and you look at Amazon, and you may suddenly find that maybe there's more of a market there.
Yeah, and that's again.
And maybe the experience of porting it to Hyper-V gave you some experience that you can use to quickly move to those other platforms.
Well, on the when you look at platform support, every platform is unique. Some platforms would be easier to support than others. Is all I want to say on that.
On the subject of everything on the table, have you ever considered the VDI front? There obviously isn't really a need to back up a desktop that gets self-deleted all the time, but who's backing up that persistent data that might be in your SAN, or certain disks that are needed, and is that a separate product today, or that you're just assuming that that your storage vendor is backing that up? What's your thought on that?
So the thought on VDI and the that type of data is that right now it's probably encapsulated in a server somewhere that's virtualized, and we're getting that as part of backup. It may not be.
When I deploy a VM as a VDI, it makes linked clones, and there you have your OS. But indeed, what you're saying, for example, View makes separate disks in which they store the user data, and it's never connected to a VM unless the VM is running. So that would be something on top of your roadmap.
Yeah.
I'm way up there.
Well, but I mean, so that's one example. But then, when you look at the VDI space, there's more than just View.
Correct.
Then you're going to get into Citrix. Honestly, that will lead you quickly to the Citrix road.
Yeah. So, right now we're happy in the infrastructure space, and not trying to target the desktop space. Maybe this is the year of VDI.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Last year was too.
Oh, the year before. Yeah. So.
Well, it's maybe not more like VDI, but actually you have just disks lying around on your storage that are not being backed up because they're not being seen by any system.
Yeah, and
so that would be as a disk backup quite easy, I think.
Yeah. There continues to be fun things with linked clones around the vStorage API for data protection.
Okay.
Right? So, linked clones, at the API level are something that it's been slow to adopt support for. It's just like, fault tolerant. FTVMs can't be snapshotted, right? It's not that we can't back them up, it's just we can't do it at the API level that we need to. If we could, then we would, but we can't. So
you won't.
So we won't. Exactly.
Playground time. So let me ask you guys something. We've talked to Doug a lot about things. What did you guys think of the VMware's announcements about data protection?
Oh, I was doing these questions with Doug.
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, because the previous software was, was not working, basically.
Wasn't okay though.
It wasn't okay.
How do we put this nicely? Yeah.
I want to put it honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot rely your production unless you are a small shop on that kind of product. But it was a good choice because it left the market open for better software, to do their own work. And now they've done this software. I haven't seen it. I've seen only the presentation, and sounds to be better. But most of all, I'm really interested in where the data and the engine comes from, and what the other companies think about this. Because to me,
Well,
Yeah.
does anybody have an answer for him?
The engine comes from Avamar. Avamar is a production.
no. I know where it comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from Avamar, and VMware at the end is an EMC company, and
But it is not Avamar. It is Avamar technology.
yes.
So they're not giving away a valuable product. They're giving
Right.
away some of the technology from a valuable
It
product.
wouldn't surprise me if the migration point from the free product they're giving away to Avamar will be very, very, very simple.
I talked with them
I don't know.
today.
They told no.
Yeah.
I talked with them today because they have in Avamar you already have certain appliances from 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte. That's for example why they now have per appliance the 2 terabyte limit, and they are working towards getting this into a higher gear and moving it further into Avamar.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't think, I love Veeam, so I will always go with Veeam. I think Veeam is easier. I think it's good that they did it. I think it's obviously geared towards the SMB. There's some limitations to it. They have a little ways to go, I think.
Yeah. Honestly, that was my
But it's a
impression.
good
The reason
first
that I
move.
asked that, I watched and I was just like, really? That's what you're gonna replace the old thing with? Is the same basic thing
No,
again?
anything was better than the old thing.
I'm not sure that this is better.
Why not?
It just
It
doesn't,
can't be worse.
do anything else.
What I saw was it looks quite good.
It looks quite good. The
I've been to the
compression
booth
ratio.
for a demo.
Yeah, but
They have currently they have some drawbacks, which is no quieting of your file system.
Fix the
OBS.
size
Yeah, but,
data stores.
So that's gonna hurt.
But my doubt is, in a demo, everything works. But when you talk about backups, no, when you talk about backups, you have to be sure
That everything
that
restores.
everything is restorable.
Yeah.
I have to take, many products are claimed to be sure, reliable, but then you try them and
Yeah.
even if it's only one error, you start to not believing in the product. Because
That's
you
right.
want the backup to run
Absolutely.
and be restorable.
But the big
Okay.
difference was, for example, with VDR. If you go into VDR and look at the directories, you can't figure out what is what.
But
In this
If
Avamar
I can
appliance,
restore, I don't care what's inside the directory.
Well,
You know,
what I like in Veeam is that I have a directory which I think is the holy grail for me. And
Yeah,
if
but
I had with Veeam a problem that we were stupid enough to place the SQL database somewhere else, lost Active Directory, lost access to SQL, so Veeam couldn't restore anymore. So I just wiped Veeam, installed a new Veeam install with SQL Express on it. And then I could just pick the back up and restore. It took me an hour, okay.
Everything, yeah.
So that's why I do care about how my backups are stored.
I just don't think that VMware has knocked off the third-party backup products.
No, if anything, you know, the other thing
Not
is,
yet, but I do see quite
Well,
an
I don't,
improvement.
will they ever? Because seriously, that would kill the interest in the Avamar product. So
or is it the opposite where, you know, them putting in a product like this maybe makes some of the third parties just have to go that extra mile to set their product apart?
well, it's important for third parties to do that. I mean, you can't just base your roadmap on what other people are doing. You have to base your roadmap on what you want your
Yeah.
product to do.
Yes.
It has to be not what is, where is the market moving. It has to be where do I want to move the market.
Mhm.
And if the third parties don't have pressure on them, then they're not going to innovate. And I think it's been great to see the wonderful innovation in the VMware backup and data protection market generally. We have some awesome third-party products here, and that's cool.
And that's, again, everybody, everybody's been asking for a response, right? It's like, what do you think? You know, it's like the press is just blowing this up, you know, and the bloggers, and everybody's like, oh no, you know, it's just
Bloggers.
not all of them, but no, I mean, you know, we view it as, you know, VDR has been around since 4.0.
It's a slightly
right?
better version of VMware.
And it's that VDR, it was never really an issue for us. It didn't stop our growth. It didn't stop us from selling. It didn't stop our channel partners from understanding that, you know, yeah, it's there, but you really need to use Veeam because it's got this, this, and this. And that's where the power comes in for us is, you know, in the channel partners that are familiar with Veeam, they've been selling Veeam already for a couple of years, and they're going to say, okay, you know, they might look at it, and they might evaluate it, and, you know, yeah, we're going to lose some deals to it, but I think, like you said, as long as we keep innovating, as long as we keep delivering the same quality of product that our customers and our channel partners are used to, is where we're going to win. So, you know, it's not a bloodbath.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to see us come out and, you know, with pitchforks and everything. It's not in the best interest of us from a business standpoint, right? It's you know, we're VMware partners. We're going to continue to be that way.
Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but one of the biggest criticisms of Veeam, speaking of going where your competitors have gone, is that you guys can't back yourselves up.
So yes, our competitors like to use that line against us, especially if you install Veeam on a physical server, is that Veeam can't back up physical, so Veeam can't back itself up.
And if you can't back yourself up, I'm going to get up and walk out of here right now.
Okay, well, you can stay seated.
Okay, there it is.
So no, and one of the things I showed you, you know, we showed you in the demo we talked about is in our 6.5 release, you'll be able to do a save configuration on a scheduled basis, daily, multiple times a day, and that'll save a configuration file of all your settings in your backup server. So should the worst thing happen, you'll be able to install Veeam fresh, import your configuration file, get all your jobs, proxies, everything back without any hassle. So
as long as the data's still there.
yeah, I mean, as long as it's not a smoking hole, a crater, you know, then you're okay. But and it also has to deal with, you know, that data thing, right? As long as the data wasn't stored where that smoking crater it now is, then you're okay.
And that gets back to the whole tiered backup idea.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
if you're putting all your eggs in snapshots and that array is gone, guess what?
Yeah.
You're gone.
The importance of DR.
Yeah.
You know, having that site where you've got Veeam installed, just, you know, for safety, safety of mind and your job. Right?
Or if you want it before you upgrade, right? You can save the configuration and then do the upgrade. And if everything works great, if not, then you can roll back and you're good to go. So.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, for the discussion before this and the discussion now here at the roundtable. Thank you guys for joining us and chiming in. And
Our pleasure.
it's good to see some new faces in here.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you guys can join us. So once again, I'm Stephen Foskett, and this is the Tech Field Day Roundtable at VMworld 2012 in San Francisco, and we'll be putting these videos up at techfieldday.com, and you can learn more about Veeam. Where?
Veeam.com?
Veeam.com. Good idea. All right. And that's a wrap, guys.
Thanks.